Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're the hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every day, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can view all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues that affect you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government. Not even me.
Good morning. Good afternoon. I'm Mark Hamilton. I am chair of the CETA, but also representative now on the Healthy Neighborhoods Advisory Committee. And since our chair resigned from the last meeting, Jessica asked me to just convene the meeting and call it to order. And we'll move us through the agenda and then go from there. So I want to welcome everyone. It is January 8th, 2025, and it's 5:31 p.m. The first item of agenda after calling this meeting to order is to approve the minutes from December 4th, 2024. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes?
I have.
Okay. I'm going to step back a second just so we all know who's on the phone and who's in the room. So we have on the phone Sharif, Deanna, and Caitlin. And in the room we have Ari, myself, and Jessica. So we're all on the same page. So sorry about that. If everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes, we'll entertain, since we have a quorum, we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Did you make that, Ari? I'm sorry.
So moved
Okay.
by Ari Lowe.
Is there a second?
To approve the minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second? I'll second it.
Second,
Okay.
Sharif.
All right. Second by Sharif. Is there any further discussion on the minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye to approve.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, our minutes of December 4th are approved. Next, we will ask, are there any public appearances for non-agenda items? I can share with you there is no one in the room. Jeremy, have you seen anybody or had anybody sign up?
No, sir.
Jessica? Okay. Seeing none, we will move into the agenda review, and there's nothing under that. So we will move on to item number 5, which is selection of a committee chair and vice chair. As you know, Ryan resigned from this committee, I think, after the last meeting or maybe right before it. And so we need to elect a committee chair and a vice chair. So, Jessica, do you have anything to add to that?
If anyone would like to step up, they are more than welcome to. Or if anyone would like to nominate someone else for the chair, they're also welcome to do that.
Don't everybody jump up on this one.
I can nominate myself
Okay.
for
Ari,
either position.
Ari is nominated herself. Theirselves, sorry. Any other nominations for chair? Okay, hearing none, we will move to approve Ari by acclamation. So we don't even need to vote. Next, we'll move to the vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
Did we have a vice chair prior to today?
Yes.
Oh. Who is the vice chair?
I believe the vice chair currently is Sharif.
Okay. Sharif.
I would take myself to remain the vice chair.
Okay. All right. Are there other nominations for vice chair other than Sharif?
I didn't realize that Sharif was already vice chair. Sharif, do you have any interest in being chair? Not to put you on the spot, but
I was actually not titled as vice chair. That's news to me as well today. Of this minute. So it's a pleasure to have served as vice chair under the committee. I would love to remain vice chair. However, I think you can handle the chair position a lot more efficiently than I have the time and commitment to dedicate.
All right. We're having fun now. So are there any, other than Sharif, who just learned he is the vice chair already, any other nominations for vice chair? All right. Hearing none, we will move to acclamation to approve Sharif as a second term as vice chair. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Ari, to you to run the meeting. Do you have an agenda?
wonderful. I do have an agenda.
Okay, so it's all yours.
Well, I thank you, Mike, for serving as temporary chair.
Mark.
Oh my gosh, Mark. Thank you so much. Okay, agenda item 5B. Review and updates to the 2025 Healthy Neighborhoods Grant Program. So hopefully everybody got a chance to see the agenda packet, which had our multi-page application there. And I wonder, would Jessica, you like to present anything before we kind of jump into a discussion?
Yeah, I would like to pull up or share my screen to I was just going to pull the forms up so we could start with reviewing the application form and those updates. My screen is showing the form and not my desktop.
Oh, is it mirroring? Is it like extended? So like maybe you have to click and drag or change the display settings?
Yes, that is probably the case. Oh my. Let me give 1 second. Yep. There you go. Okay. So we can start with reviewing the application form here. The biggest changes that staff is proposing are down here, and that would be removing them reporting on their application Fitchburg residents within the priority neighborhoods. And so then they would report on just Fitchburg residents and non-Fitchburg residents.
Would it make sense to kind of start page by page? So with page 1, asking if anybody has questions, clarification, or suggestions for changes?
Yeah, of course.
All right, let's start with page 1. Cover page, I guess it's called.
Here we are.
So I had a question about item number 13. It says, if the opportunity arises, may we share this application with other funders? Has the opportunity ever arose, and what is that question about?
Great question. To my knowledge, the opportunity's never been arisen. I did not create this application, so I don't understand. My understanding of why that's being asked is not clear, but I can find an answer on why we are asking if we can share with other funders. Unless Deanna
if I may,
has any. Go ahead.
I would this is just based off of assumption. I'm assuming that with the fact that each application entered is a private information, in the case where we want to use those applications as a reference for future applicants. I'm assuming that's what that caveat is kind of in place for.
Sounds good to me.
I stepped away. Could you could you repeat what item you were talking about?
Yeah, we were
Item number 13, page 1. Oh, actually, bullet point number 13, page 1. And we are still on the application form.
And then what did that read?
So that reads, if the opportunity arises, may we share this application with other funders?
Oh, yeah, that one's something that is older. It doesn't have to stay. I don't believe that we've ever shared the information with other funders. I think the thinking was perhaps if in the future we had more application funding requests than what was available, maybe we would have some other contacts that could support the grant program. But we've never used it. And I should just be very clear, all of these applications, once they're made to a public organization like the city of Fitchburg, they're all public information. And all of it can be requested as public information.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, thank you. I would recommend removing question 13 since it's potentially confusing and unnecessary, maybe.
No objection from my end.
Agreed.
You
Cool.
don't want us to vote on this, do you, Jessica?
No, there's no need for a vote.
Any other comments or questions on the first page of the application, what we're calling cover page? Hearing none, I'm going to move on to page 2, project proposal. Any comments, questions, or recommendations? Well, I had a recommendation in 2A. It seems to be asking which priority neighborhoods we're serving, but on the first page, question 12 already requests information on which priority neighborhoods are being served. So I was wondering if there's additional information that we're trying to be gathering here in 2A.
From just reading those 2 sentences, it appears that the second page is asking for additional details. If I read that correctly, it's asking for the program focus areas the project intends to cover, and also highlighting which priority neighborhood those particular programs apply to. So they might have multiple different programs targeting different neighborhood. Sometimes they might have different ones targeting the same neighborhood. And I think this is just to further clarify that in the case that there are multiple priority neighborhood being served and different projects focus on a different neighborhood. That would be my understanding.
That works for me. I like the removal of asking about Fitchburg residents within and Fitchburg residents outside of priority neighborhoods, since we did receive feedback that that was hard for grant recipients to track. So I like that recommendation from staff and would just recommend that we also make sure that the numbers align. So I and then I instead of I. So under item number 3, 3A, we have 3AI and 3AII. Yeah.
I can edit that.
Anything else for page 2? Okay. Lovely. Page 3. Comments, questions, or recommendations? Well, I had a question to other people as far as this outcome impact. I wasn't sure if we really wanted to make the recipient write out every single outcome impact. I can see how that information could be good for the recipient to think through. I'm just not sure what we would do with that data or if we really need to be collecting it. Because on page 2, question 2B, I think it is, says identify the project purpose. Oh no, it was 2C, identify the impact. So we already are asking impact of the project in general. And then down below, I know that this is different, but then on page 3, we're asking for outcome impact for every single outcome. And it seems to me like a lot of like typing for recipients. And I don't know if we want to keep that or not. So
I think the reason that that is placed there is in there, when they are doing their reporting, it's the same layout. So when they go to report their information, if they've already filled this out, they can copy and paste it to make their reporting a little bit simpler for them.
I think it's the more information we could have to assess it, the better off we are. And having filled out a significant number of applications in my career, you will give the same thing a couple times in an application. The bike league's 80-page document's a good example. So I don't think they ought to be able to document how they're collecting their data and what they're getting out of it. That's why we're giving them money. And if they're not, then what happens down the road? I think that gets into our strategic plan discussion later on, but I don't see this being a problem. I haven't heard it. Have you heard anybody complain about it, Jessica, at all?
I have not, no.
So some feedback that we have received from applicants is that this application process was long. There were a lot of questions in order to apply for a small amount of money. And so, I mean, not that $15,000 is a small amount of money, but compared to other grants that are out there, this is the feedback that we received from previous grant recipients. So that's the only thing. Any other comments or questions on page 3? Lovely. Moving on to page 4. Project strategies, activities, and personnel, as well as budget. Any comments, questions, or recommendations? So I don't know if anybody else noticed 4C or were bothered by it. I was. So 4C asks for key personnel qualifications, identifying any training, participant selection procedures, or policies. So I have 2 comments here. One is, if we're asking for the qualifications of the key personnel who are responsible for implementing the program, it seems to me, and this is just my personal opinion, like we're micromanaging and also we're promoting credentialism, which would be like kind of, I mean, I don't know if everybody knows credentialism, but I see it as kind of like an elitism. Like we believe a lot in, you know, getting a college degree makes you qualified, more qualified than, you know, other things. And so I was not sure if we wanted to keep that in. The second part of my question about this item, though, is participant selection procedures. And I didn't know if participant meant key personnel or like people who are receiving the service. So, yeah.
I can answer your initial.
I think that.
Go ahead, Caitlin.
No, I'm happy for you to answer the question. And then I just have a thought.
Yeah, I was just going to answer your question on participant selection. I believe that's on the individuals who will be participating in whatever the grant is proposing.
So does that mean the benefactor of the grants or the participants organizing the program itself and participating in the program that the grant is funding? I'm assuming from that question reads, it sounds like it's trying to get a better understanding of the program itself and personnel that are handling the program and their efficient capacity or qualifications to better judge or gauge the efficiency of the program itself.
Can you clarify what your question is?
Oh, no, I'm not asking a question, actually. I was just stating a thought process.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the fact that I'm under the impression that, although this is listed in the wrong order, 4C is trying to identify or base on the project itself. So even the number 4 itself looks like it's trying to get a better understanding of the project itself and the strategies around the project and the personnel guiding the project itself.
I also read that question as the olive C as related. Although I think it's unclear, and maybe that's the conclusion here, is that we need to clarify. Because the first two clauses, key personnel qualifications, including any training, and then there's, you know, a few more things. So I think it would just be good to clarify whatever the intent is behind that prompt. And then I would say, as if it's related to personnel qualifications, the main way in which I personally would see that as relevant, and I think it comes up later on, but I can't remember for sure, is, you know, if, for example, for a project, they're prioritizing hiring residents of the priority neighborhood, that I know that would be kind of a, you know, in their favor, right? If they're, if that's one of the sort of aims of the project. So that's the only relevance that I see there, is just making sure there's not only, you know, hiring folks from within a priority neighborhood, but also folks who represent maybe the demographics of the neighborhood, including language.
Did anyone else have any thoughts as to whether 4C should stay in or should come out? I'm fine either way, but just kind of curious about other people's opinions.
I don't have strong feelings over whether it should stay or go, although I am very much in agreement that as much as we can simplify, I do think that's going to be really helpful for folks. But I would say if we keep it, if it can be clarified, that would be important.
Sharif, do you have opinions on keeping it or taking it out?
I would love for that to stay, just as she's previously mentioned, proper clarification to the participant selection and maybe just clarifying that that's actually people who are working within the program, within the scope of the program. Because I think it's an important and valuable information to have, even though it might not be deemed necessary.
Great. In that case, I would also recommend, so it sounds like we're in favor of keeping it. I would recommend for ease of reading it, that, at least the way I'm reading it, it sounds like qualifications, comma, including any training, comma. The including any training is like, I don't know what you call it, but one of those phrases that modifies qualifications. And so maybe qualifications / training, and then comma, selection procedures, comma, or policies. I don't know, but qualifications / training. Okay. Any other comments on page 4?
Purpose of E would be a question of mine.
Yes, 4E says identify how a program funding award would be recognized / publicized. I do not have strong opinions on keeping or letting it go.
I'm just going to weigh in on this from having done some of these. I think there's, if nothing else, the city needs to know who may get told about an award besides the city if it goes further. And I think that's just a courtesy thing that says we're going to tell, for example, Chicago. I mean, that's how I read that. I don't think it's a problem. They need to be thinking about how it's going to go beyond, because somebody else may want to take this grant and use it elsewhere. So I don't have a problem with 4E, and that's how I interpret what it's saying in there.
I would agree. Sorry, we were fixing my laptop when you were discussing this. The program funding, I think, when it's publicized and recognized by the organizations that receive it, it's good for the city to know where that information is going. And it's not saying that they can't publicize it or recognize it. It's just good information for the city to be informed.
Sounds good.
I was also wondering about 4D. It says identify how the project will be funded after the program funding award is used. And I was wondering, is that supposed to be like after the funding is awarded, or like is used? Like what? I'm just confused what it's asking.
I believe this is specific.
I understood that.
Go ahead.
I think you know better than I do. I just had a guess, but go ahead.
I was just going to say that I believe that this is specific to programs if they are running year after year, to understand if we're giving them funding and their program, say they want it to run for 3 years and we give them funding for 1 year and then the program no longer continues, we just want to make sure that the program's sustainable relative to what they're proposing. Now, some programs may not run year after year and they may just be wanting the funding for a couple months or a year, but if the program that they're proposing goes on after, that's understanding that the program will be sustainable with the funding that we give them.
Lovely. And then I would recommend. Sharif, go ahead.
Can we possibly clarify that to more so list maybe a more direct approach as to other fundings that are available for the current program that they're applying for, versus when the funding is used up, what other fundings do you have in line? It's kind of how the question reads. But I think it would capture more information if it's just more so what other fundings are available for this program. And I'm not sure if that's a question that we're eligible to ask as well.
I believe in their reporting, their personnel reporting, they do report where they've received other funds from other entities about the program that they're running. So we do get that information.
Welcome, Alder.
In that case,
Welcome, Alder Allen. We're in the middle of agenda item 5B. We're reviewing the grant application. Sharif, go ahead.
in that case, if we already have a different forum to capture that information, then I think it's either we reword it here or we can do without. But I think it should be rewarded just to capture a quick summary without telling what the amount of the funds are, where other funds might be harvested from to sustain the program itself. So I think just rephrasing that statement or that sentence would suffice, and I think it should possibly remain.
Super. So it sounds like for item 4 on page 4, we're recommending rewording what is now item C, although that should be item B because it's the second in the list. What is now item D should also be, or is being recommended to reword. And it should also be updated to be item C. And then item E should be updated to be item D. Any other comments on page 4? Lovely. Page 5, we are continuing to talk about budgets on page 5. Any comments, recommendations, questions? Lovely. Hearing no recommendations. Finally, we have the page, what are we on, 6? Supplementary information optional and application review process information, in which I'd like to make a recommendation that bullet number 1 say 2025 Healthy Neighborhood Grant Application Review Form instead of 2024. Other comments, questions, or recommendations?
Do folks remember in reviewing applications last year, the letters of support?
Yeah, a few applicants did actually submit letters of support, which was nice, I guess. It wasn't necessary.
Something that I'm thinking is that when we name things as optional, I think people who are asking for money often feel like they should include them or do those things. So I guess my curiosity is, like, even though it's optional, do we still feel like it's helping to inform our decisions?
It did not help inform my decisions last year during the grant application process.
Well, maybe I would just recommend considering removing it, just because that shared goal of trying to remove some of the burden of the application. But if folks want to leave it in, I'm okay with that too. I don't have a strong opinion, but I'm just looking for those opportunities to simplify.
What do we mean by a letter of support anyway? Is that like a reference from someone who's participated in a similar program from this organization? Is it something that says this organization is wonderful? Is it
all of the above are options?
Yeah,
I think it's all the above. Yeah.
Well, since we're saying it's optional, I think just going with number 2, and if they want to submit some letters, that's fine. I don't know why we're calling that out as a special optional thing. But we could probably just combine both of those things. I don't know what other additional information they might be proposing, because the application's pretty thorough.
Yep, so it sounds like recommendation is to remove number 1 and just say that if you want to include a letter of recommendation or a letter of support, then that would be additional information, which is covered in number 2. Any other recommendations for changing page 6? Lovely. All right. Then we are on to application guidelines. We've got a timeline, application eligibility. Questions, recommendations, concerns?
I think one of the things that I noticed, and this is not a huge deal, on page 2, it says among the things that are not eligible are short-term events and celebrations. I thought that was something that we have funded in the past, and maybe that's, I'm not sure it's an important detail, but just wanted to mention that I did notice that.
In that same list, I agree, Caitlin. And in that same list, I was concerned that it says healthcare services, including mental health, are ineligible, as well as substance abuse treatment. And I was whoever's controlling the screen right now, we're now on the next page. And it says the following projects/class are not eligible. There you go, that list. And there are items that say healthcare services, and then Caitlin mentioned the short-term events and celebrations, and now I'm also mentioning substance abuse treatment. So does anybody have insight into why healthcare services and substance abuse treatment were on that list?
My understanding is for legal reasons.
I will jump in here.
And I was going to say Deanna might have more background.
Yeah, I think I want to jump in here. So these lists also came from the city attorney. I'm sure there's good reasons why we want to walk carefully into healthcare and mental health and substance abuse. I would suggest to the committee to not make a change to that until we've cleared that through the city attorney, okay? And then as for short-term events, we have supported an event as part of a larger project, but we have not supported if an agency just wants to do a single event. We have not did that in the past.
My suspicion is that the reason for excluding healthcare, mental health, substance abuse treatment is that those tend to be very personalized kind of things, and we're the purpose of this program is a neighborhood focus. So we're trying to benefit more than just a couple of individuals, but trying to, spread everything around the whole neighborhood, things that everyone can participate in, like, the food programs and other things like that.
Thank you for the clarification from both of you. Deanna, for clarification, I'm looking at my notes and it says Just Dane, so for 2024 applicants, Just Dane and Allied Dunsmarsh Neighborhood Association requested money for a neighborhood get-together, I guess, for marketing and promotion, website, newsletter, pumpkin carving, and survey. And I think, awarded $1,500 for that. So that seems to me like a single event. Is that something where our committee should have read our own recommendations? Or can you please provide some insight?
No, I think my interpretation of their application was neighborhood building, community building. The website wasn't tailored towards the actual event. I think what you funded was a larger community building process with an event as part of it.
Thank you. I also had a question at the very bottom of the first page, so that whoever's controlling the screen, if you scroll up just a tiny bit, yeah, in yellow, organizations that work with a fiscal agent / sponsor. Can someone tell me what that means?
Do you want me to take that one too?
I was going to say, I think you have a better understanding to explain, especially with Allied Duns Marsh and that situation.
I think we run into a problem as an official agency handling these grant funds. And Allied Duns Marsh was unfortunately one of those issues. That's why we cannot, as an official entity of the city, we, through this particular program, need to give these funds through a fiscal agent or actually a 501c3. So that's the way this particular program is set up, to go through a 501c3. And we have just struggled at the staff level to manage the process when we try to work with a smaller agency in this program that is not a 501c3. So that's why staff is recommending that we work with 501c3s and try to avoid working with this particular program agency that needs to work through a fiscal agency. So a group that needs to work through a fiscal agency or sponsor is one that's not a 501c3. I think that summarizes it better.
Thank you.
Have we awarded things to agencies in the past that have been in this situation?
To my knowledge, only one, and that was to Allied Duns Marsh. And they have struggled, and they are not going to be able to complete the grant. They've struggled with managing the funding in this case.
So we awarded them funds for 2024, and they weren't able to do what they said they were going to do.
That's correct.
I see. Is that what is that? Is that like a neighborhood group or?
Yes.
I see.
It is a neighborhood organization, a smaller neighborhood organization, and you'll have to refresh my memory, Jessica. I can't remember who they're working through.
Just Dane.
Just Dane, right? Mm-hmm.
Oh, Just Dane, didn't they have their own application last year also?
No, that was the Allied Duns Marsh one.
Oh, okay. All right. Were they not able to provide the services that they said they were going to, or are they having trouble with the reporting, or what's the actual issue?
They weren't able to actually perform the services that they had planned to do.
I see. And what prevented them from doing that, do we know?
I don't know all of the background of what has prevented it, but
okay.
They didn't participate in the mid-year check-in. They didn't provide any mid-year check-ins. I think it was just a matter of not having enough time and people power to do what they had agreed to do.
So you feel that requiring that these that the applicants be a 501c3 will alleviate that kind of issue in the future?
Not necessarily, but because certainly some of the 501c3s haven't always performed entirely their projects either. We haven't always awarded the funds, but with the city attorney's with the city attorney's advice, this program needs to have a 501c3 that actually accepts the funds.
Well, then perhaps we should word that differently than it's worded, because the statement, organizations that work with a fiscal agent sponsor, isn't very clear. If what we're saying is we want organizations that are a 501c organization, and I don't know that we should limit it to 501c3s. There are 501c6s and 501c8s that are out there that would probably be good types of organizations to get this grant. So, I mean, I think anything under the 501c category probably would be, I would just say you must be a 501c organization, or, you know, whatever makes more sense. But yeah, if we're shooting for clear language.
It also already says, I can't remember where, but it already says that you have to be a 501c3 or oh, I see. Application eligibility. The following entities are eligible to apply. Oh, so it doesn't say that it's required. Okay. Wow. I just had a thought process out loud. Cool. So can we take that as something that you'll work with the city attorney on, Jessica, maybe, to make sure that we are specifying 501c, like, do we really only want 3s? And then just making sure that the bullet point for organizations that work with a fiscal agent / sponsor is actually eliminating the programs that we want to eliminate, and just that it's being specific as to what we really want to achieve. Okay. I think that covers the following projects / costs are not eligible. Okay, then below the map, still on the second page, it says program focus areas. And I think Alder Allen sent out an email with some ideas of, I don't remember. It was something else, but I felt like those could be good bullet points also for the program focus areas.
Oh, our pillars.
The pillars.
The
That's
pillars.
what it was. Yes.
The 12 pillars that we've expanded from the original 6.
Yes.
5.
I do think, related to the pillars, but specifically to the focus areas, we have talked about adding housing as one of those critical focus areas. I don't know if we want to formally add that here, but I noticed it was not here. And we do ask organizations to speak to which of the focus areas they're using in their application. So wondering about housing.
So right now, the H&I strategic plan, these are the focus areas that are included in the plan that the city has posted currently. So the update of the plan, which is what we are in the process of talking about, has not been posted, and the grant program is reflective of our strategic plan. So the focus areas that we have now up there are the ones that are currently in our strategic plan, and staff recommends keeping these focus areas because that is what the strategic plan is demonstrating on our website. Whereas when the plan becomes updated, the focus areas can also be updated.
Being new to this group, can somebody, Alan, can you refresh the 12 pillars? Because I'm not seeing transportation in here. And I think I continue to hear that through a lot around Fitchburg, and it's identified in your new strategic plan, I think.
Well, we're going to talk about this a lot more at length in the future, in one of the next agenda items. But let me see if I can find the email. I'm sorry, I ran out of time today and was not able to go home and get my laptop, where looking this stuff up would be a lot easier. But the Ari and I met a few weeks ago, and we talked at great length about this. And one of the things that we did was go through the 5 pillars that were originally in the the HNI comprehensive plan, which is different, or HNI strategic plan, which is different than the city's strategic plan. So the 12 things that we had in there were diverse employment, education, food security, diverse housing, housing security, healthcare, childcare, transportation, safety, healthy landscapes, community and recreation, and translation services. So I don't know that we want to use H&I grant money specifically for a transportation thing, because that'll chew up a lot of money really fast, and we have a very limited amount of money that we can use. And if we did, I don't know what form that would take. I know we had a couple of years ago, I don't think it was last year, it might have been 2023 or 2022, we had a request from the Fitchburg Senior Center for some money to for a ride program to help seniors get to the senior center. And that ultimately was not funded by our grant program. And it's continuing to be an issue because we haven't been able to find money in the budget to enhance the transportation situation there either. So, and I think Jill was asking for like $5,000, which was a pretty big chunk. So yeah, it seems like, again, that's a lot more of an individualized thing. And I guess to some extent, all of these programs are reaching individuals. So I don't know. I mean, we can throw it in there if you want. I don't know that I don't know that this program is the most appropriate funding mechanism for transportation.
If you're looking at me, I just brought it up. I mean, I know what I continue to hear around the city, and transportation is one of them. So
it's huge.
I'm not one way or the other. We have a limited amount. I totally understand that. But the key is getting people to programs is also an important issue. if
is.
we're going to give grants to it. So
Hopefully.
I see them tied together, Jay. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I think one of the things that we are shooting for with this program is that these will actually be happening in the neighborhoods where the needs are. So there shouldn't be a huge need to have people transported to where these programs are happening.
I just want to jump in because I did hear that the recommendation is not to change these focus areas right now. It feels like a useful conversation. Maybe, I guess maybe can we clarify, is it worth having a conversation about changing the program focus areas if the recommendation is to not change them right now? Do we table it? Do we stay with it?
Perhaps in the interest of moving forward with this current round of applications, we could just discuss if there's anything that's definitely missing from the list, and then maybe next year we could modify the list a little more. So is there anything?
Then I'll just jump in and say, sorry, Ari. Yeah, so I think housing is definitely missing from the list. And I think we pointed that out in the last round, and would love to see that change if folks feel that that's appropriate. I do think that transportation can be connected to a lot of these things. And so if a grant is asking for transportation to a place of education, workforce development, a job, to a food pantry, that I could see it being, it would still be relevant. It would be related to one of those program areas. From what I understand about the transportation grant that was denied, I thought that was more on terms of them contracting with like Uber or something like that was more of the sticking point, but I wasn't here at the time. But I do think housing is definitely missing from the list, and I would hope that in future iterations, when we can make changes, that we could add housing, since we know it's such a critical need.
So adding housing, any other items, or any discussion about adding housing or any other items that are missing from this list?
Well, the only other thing I would add is that we do have an entirely different committee that is dealing with housing. And I did mention at the council meeting maybe a month ago, I don't know how long ago it was. It seems like it was last year. The issues that our committee, as this committee has changed with the specific members that are on it, we're starting to see an expanded scope, I think, of what this committee is going to need to do, because the housing security is clearly a vital issue in these neighborhoods. And it was amazing to me going through the HNI strategic plan, which we're going to talk about in a bit, that there was no mention of housing anywhere in that entire strategic plan. And I don't know who put that together. It was done in 2019. I don't know who was responsible for it, but it was clearly not people who had any idea what living in these neighborhoods is like. So I think that is an issue, and I think it is something we're going to have to work on. I just don't know that we can add that to this list right now. And I don't even know if we're talking about a $1,500 maximum grant, I don't even know how that would play out for one of these organizations that may be applying. What would you do with $1,500 to really help with housing?
The maximum amount that they can apply for is 15,000.
Oh, 15,000. That's okay. I was confused.
So did we land on any decision on including housing or not?
From staff's perspective, I would like to reiterate what Jay said, that we have hired Lorraine Gage, who handles housing. She's our housing specialist. And again, from staff's perspective, with the plan not being updated, these are the current focus areas in our current strategic plan. And when the grant program is supposed to be reflective of the strategic plan that the city currently has, and currently housing is not listed in that plan.
Ari, I would concur with what Alder Allen and Jessica said. Also, I do think housing is getting addressed through Noreen, but I also think transportation has to somehow come into this in the future, because as I looked at that strategic plan, transportation's all over it. And so somehow there may not be enough that we have to deal with it, but I think we at least need to acknowledge it somehow, either down the road as you finish it all up. But I wouldn't lose sight of it.
Well, we also have a Transportation and Transit Commission, and at some point, hopefully, I don't know if we'll get to it this year, but we're going to need to find a way to cross-pollinate these different committees, and talk about the stuff we're seeing and how this is all going to work together, because we have it doesn't make a lot of sense for a bunch of groups to be tugging, at the balloon in different directions. If we want to make everything work together, we're going to actually have to work together. So I'm not quite sure how to do that. I mean, it may mean that we have all of our committees meet in a joint meeting once a year or something to that effect. There is a challenge, because even our staff contacts are in different departments in the city. So somehow we're going to need to all figure out how to cross-pollinate and make stuff work together. So that's some, and I think for the 2026 budget, I'm going to be pushing for this committee to be to be funded for 12 meetings, because right now we're only funded for 8, and it's clear that the interests of the members of this committee are well beyond whatever this committee was originally intended to do. And it's probably just because when the committee was formed, nobody really knew what, there was the idea something needs to be done, so let's do this. But now that we're getting, ankle deep and knee deep into it, we see there's a lot more that needs to be done. So I'm going to be pushing for that.
For the sake of time for this discussion, we've spent an hour now, and I would love for us to also get to the strategic plan. So I am going to recommend that we keep this list as is for now. And I would also recommend that we skip over to potentially page 16 of the agenda packet, which is the 2024, the grant application review form, where it has eligibility and completeness. Are there any other comments before we skip over to page 16, which is the application review form? Lovely. Okay. Let's skip over to the application review form. So eligibility and completeness, we have our, for neighborhoods, we have our activities with those same core focus areas: youth mentoring, youth education, so forth and so on. Any recommendations on any of this section? I'm not going to go page by page this time. Okay, hearing none.
Is the application's currently on the website right now? Is it available for people to download and fill out?
It's not available right now. Not the 2025 one, no.
Okay. Well, if it's supposed to be returned by February 9th, we're going to need to get it up there soon. And what is our process for letting organizations know that the application's ready and available? And
So I will send out an email to the past recipients letting them know that it's open. I've also been in contact with staff who handles social media for the city, and they will put a blast out on the social media pages letting everyone know that the grant application has opened.
Does the application, so here's the application guidelines. We should put something on this form. Okay, so this is where we had the organizations that work with a fiscal agent are not a good match. This is the form where we should specify that we want them to be a 501c organization.
My understanding is that the page that we're currently looking at is a kind of behind the scenes form, like a form for like someone within our committee to fill out. It may not be as urgent to update, but yeah, it would definitely make sense to make sure that question 1 reflects what we actually want to evaluate in our applicants. Any other comments or recommendations for changes? Jessica, do you have any ideas on like timeline of making these updates that were recommended?
Yes, so I'm hoping to have the updates completed by tomorrow. And if it's not posted by tomorrow, then it'll be posted on Friday, and I'll make sure all that information gets out through email and then through the social media pages. And then, like last year, applicants will have a month to complete the application. So if it gets posted on the 10th, they'll have until February 10th to get their application submitted.
Lovely. Any other discussion on this agenda item before we move on to 5C? Thank you so much for staff's hard work on this. And moving on to agenda item 5C, this is resolution R-196-24, adopting and approving the City of Fitchburg strategic plan. So the strategic plan was also in this agenda packet. Hopefully everybody got a chance to see it. Jessica, would you like to talk a little bit about which particular sections we should focus on?
So we will be focusing on objectives 4.2, 5.1, and 5.2 as they are specifically related to the healthy neighborhoods and will have, if adopted, will impact the update of the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative Strategic Plan. So pulled up now, I have objective 4.2.
Any discussion or recommendations on objective 4.2, which is currently displayed on the screen?
So this is talking about, so among other things in this section, it's talking about the Neighborhood Improvement District, which I had no idea what that was. And so when Ari and I met, we looked it up to find out what it is. So essentially, it appears to be a special tax district where you would go into a specific neighborhood and do a special assessment for the purpose of raising money to do certain things within that district. So it's kind of like a TID district, except it's not based on tax increment, it's based on a special assessment of some sort. We didn't look into it deep enough to see exactly how that's done. I mean, it's probably just like any other special assessment we do. Like when one particular neighborhood is having a major stormwater issue, we'll tax that neighborhood to fix the stormwater issue, that kind of thing. So it looked like the city of Milwaukee was doing some stuff with the money that they collected. And so some of those things were like improved street lighting, some public art. What were the other things when we looked at that site? You had it on your phone.
I just found that they were that some of these neighborhood improvement districts in the city of Milwaukee were like parks or areas of communal gathering.
Yeah.
I did not find much information on their website.
Yeah, but I thought, wasn't that the one that talked about public art that they were funding and improved street lighting, and I can't remember the other stuff.
I think so,
There were a
yes.
few other specific things, but generally, I think if we go this route, what it sounded like is that Milwaukee would go and hold meetings in the neighborhoods before they implemented the district, just to see what kinds of things people think would improve the value of the neighborhood. And you got to get the property owners involved because they're the ones who are going to have to pay for this, and that can be a little bit of a hurdle in and of itself. But it also depends on how much money you're trying to raise. If you're trying to raise $1 million, that's one thing. If you're trying to raise $150,000, that's something different. So, the question that I had here is this entire document was maddening for me because many of the data measures were things like how many meetings are you holding between. Count the number of meetings you're holding as if that's a data point that's useful for anything. But one of the things that it says here is data measure is outreach made to the city of Milwaukee to explore the feasibility of the neighborhood improvement district model in Fitchburg. And I guess the question is, who does that outreach? Do you do that? Does Deanna do that? Is that a Mike Zimmerman thing? Is that a Chad Brecklin thing? I mean, who's the one who's taking the lead to reach out and find out how they're doing it, get more details, that kind of thing?
That would be my responsibility.
Okay.
Yes.
So
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. You could please finish, Jay.
No, I was just going to say, I really like this idea if we can get it really focused and get the property owners on board.
I just kind of want to bring the priority, like thinking specifically about priority neighborhoods and how this might impact our neighborhoods. I'm concerned about not seeing a commitment to affordable housing alongside, because when I just the little bit that I'm reading here, I'm concerned about gentrification, and what's going to happen to residents and affordability for renters less than property owners. And so that's my concern with 4.2 is that we want these healthy neighborhoods to be places where, folks who are already here can stay rather than be pushed out by some of these initiatives that are, really focusing on neighborhood improvement.
Well, I think the idea behind it is kind of this gets to another one of the pillars that we were talking about, kind of the community building aspect, like especially with one of the things I thought about as I thought about this is we're we're going to be spending a bunch of money to improve the, to make some improvements to the Southdale neighborhood park. And part of that's going to include a shelter and some restrooms. And so a thought I had is, well, what if we got the members of the neighborhood who might want to paint the shelter or do some public art on the shelter, something that helps them claim it as their own. You know, I just like the idea of having people in neighborhoods take some ownership over the neighborhood. And that's really hard in some ways. On the other hand, you know, I've gotten to know some residents of Southdale, and many of the people who live there have lived there for a long, long time, like 30 years in some cases. So, but part of it's just to make it more welcoming and give people a better stamp of approval of their own neighborhood, I guess. And again, you're right. We don't want to create a tax that's going to make, you know, that's going to double their rents. So I think we have to be very specific about what we do, which is hopefully what consulting with Milwaukee will help us with. Because Milwaukee's actually implementing this. I think it's the only city in the state that is doing it.
I think I'd want an awful lot more information about what this program even is. And again, I didn't find the information that I'm looking for on their website before I said whether it's a good idea or not. Some of the information that I'm finding, which may or may not be relevant to neighborhood improvement districts, seems to be that there are like funds available to homeowners who want to make like invest in home improvements to their homes or duplexes. So again, assisting homeowners. If that's what the program is, then I would agree with Caitlin's, kind of hesitations there. If it's more along the lines of having like public art, which sounds wonderful, then, you know, maybe that's something to consider for sure. I would want a lot more information about what this program is.
Well, I think the good news is we get to set the guidelines. So, you know, we get to decide what the money will be used for. It sounded at another resource I looked at, it sounded like this pretty much is the type of approval this goes through is very similar to what we do in a TIF district, where we would have a specific project plan that says we're going to pay for A, B, C, D, and E, and it's going to cost this much. And so the special assessment is going to be for this amount of money. Or, you know, if we're doing, like I had mentioned earlier, if we're doing a sewer project or a sidewalk project that involves special assessments, it's the same thing where we specifically say, this is what we're going to do, this is where the money's coming from.
So I guess the question is, we don't know much about it, but do we want to spend staff, do we want to keep it in the strategic plan as a recommendation that it is another item for Jessica or some staff member to work on? Like, do we see enough potential benefit?
What is our role in this document? Like, are we just sharing thoughts on it, recommending changes? I guess I'm not clear on our role.
Well, we can recommend changes, and those changes will go to the council with the expectation that this is going to be approved sometime in February, I think.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's the way I understand it too. So, I mean, I think if we don't think this warrants further discussion or study, then I'm assuming we ask that it be removed or changed. I'd like to know a lot more about this. I think I give you guys kudos for going and looking up at what Milwaukee's doing, but I think there's potential here. It gives it focus. It gives this group focus and some recognition up the line in the city government, at least. So I certainly wouldn't take it out. It could be better worded. Perhaps Jessica and Deanna and staff can do that. But I think to find out what's going on, I'd even look beyond Milwaukee and see what other cities are doing. And, you know, I mean, I guess my good example, Jay, of a neighborhood is what they did over by the Fitchburg tennis court with that artwork over there. It's mentioned right up there, public art.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing for the neighborhood. So I don't know. I'd say leave it in, but if it needs to be revised, that's okay. But it's in there. As this goes forward, it gives us something else to look at. My 2 cents.
I just want to register whatever context I can. Register that yes, we need more information. I think that we want measures of accountability. I know that for TIF districts and for the NID model as well, accountability is an issue. So accountability and a model for neighborhood feedback. Southdale has seen detrimental impacts of a TIF district. And so when I saw this, I was really concerned because of how impactful that's been for our neighborhood. So accountability and neighborhood, like authentic neighborhood input with proper information so that we're not seeing similar impacts as the TIF districts that have, been impacted our neighborhood.
Yeah, unfortunately, that particular TIF district has been, in the township days, was basically, the large property owner over there wants something, so we're going to fund it to make it happen. And that's not the way we do TIF districts in Fitchburg. So when the town of Madison dissolved, that TIF district dissolved with it. So there's a new TIF district over there that includes all of the property except for the residential property, the existing residential property. That property is excluded from the TIF district, which irritated me a little bit, but it is what it is. We can always create a new TIF district for those other properties, but we would have to come up with some specific ideas of how we would want to do that, because typically, so the way a TIF district works is you're working with the tax increment that is generated by increasing the value of the property. So unless we're talking about a redevelopment plan where we're going to go in there and demolish a bunch of the existing buildings and build a bunch of new ones, a TIF district doesn't really help you because it doesn't generate any revenue that can be used to make the improvements that you need. So that's why this particular tool might be a better tool in a neighborhood like that. But you're absolutely right that we need to be cognizant of the fact that many of the people who are living there are on the edge right now. And I already saw a letter that one of the property owners sent out to the residents saying, well, now that we're in the city of Fitchburg, our property taxes went way up, and so we're increasing our rent by a whole bunch. And when I did the math on it, he was basically increasing his rent 3 times what the Fitchburg property tax impact was. So, he just wanted some more money and wanted to blame it on the city of Fitchburg. And those are things that we have to be aware of also.
I want to make a note here that the second item in the agenda is the discussion of the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative strategic plan. The reason that I put that in with this resolution is the city strategic plan that we are discussing now will shape staff's work and where the resources go in the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative strategic plan. So the committee will need to provide a recommendation and make a motion for council. So what I'm saying here is the next agenda item we are kind of discussing in conjunction with this plan to have an understanding of if whatever the committee decides to recommend or approve these objectives, they will need to be included in the update of the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative strategic plan. So what happens with this city's plan that we are discussing now will have a direct impact on our Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative strategic plan.
So there are two other parts of this section, and the next one is the exploring the creation and funding of neighborhood level microgrant programs that would be used for public art and community building initiatives, that kind of thing. And that could be something like, let's say the neighborhood wants to paint a mural on a building and we have the building owner's permission to do that, so the city's going to buy some paint. These would, a micro grant, as I understand it from what the intent of this was, are grants that are less than $1,000. Now, right now, there's no money in the budget for this, so this would have to be added into the city's budget in the future. Or, you know, maybe to throw some seed money in to start a neighborhood festival or that kind of thing. I think looking into this some more and seeing what other communities are doing, and Madison actually does quite a few of these things. And they have a process for approval for that, which is similar but not quite as rigorous as our H&I grant is. So I think that's certainly something to look into. And then the other item in this section was trying to find more money for the H&I grant program, which, you know, clearly from past years we need, I mean, there's so many things that can be done, and there just isn't the money for it. So my proposal to have the city buy lottery tickets did not pass.
For this entire objective 4.2, the heading talks about within healthy neighborhoods. Do they mean priority neighborhoods? And then again, it says for objective 4.2 initiative, like the first orange triangle, it says for any Fitchburg, the very last phrase, for any Fitchburg healthy neighborhoods. And I think they might mean priority neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you're right. There.
So then, Jessica, can you make that recommendation to change that in the strategic plan? And then the last kind of nitpicky word thing that I have is in objective 4.2, the third orange triangle, invest more funding in the healthy neighborhoods. Are we still an initiative grant program, or are we like an advisory grant program?
I think we can just drop the word initiative completely because it's the Healthy Neighborhoods Grant Program. What does it say on the top of the application? Maybe that needs to be fixed too.
I know that it's a Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative strategic plan. So I think that since the grant programming is following the strategic plan, that would be why the wording is similar.
Well, the strategic plan should change because we're no longer an initiative. But I am looking up above within this agenda packet, and it says Healthy Neighborhoods Grant Program. Yeah, so let's also recommend to remove that word initiative from that third orange triangle.
And that goes down to the data measure thing as well. It should just be HN funding. Take off the I.
It's one of those things where it's always been that way, but we are evolving.
Any other discussion on objective 4.2?
So we should put all of that discussion into a motion that we can pass on to the council.
So from what I'm gathering from the discussion, and someone please interject if they have a different summary, it sounds like we like all three of these items, and the only change that we would recommend would be maybe those nitpicky word changes, or am I missing another change that we landed on? Okay, lovely. So
I would say, I just want to jump in. I have serious concerns about the first one. I don't, because it's just an exploration. I don't know, I just don't feel comfortable saying I like all three. I have serious concerns about the neighborhood improvement district model. And so, again, I'm not sure how to build that into a motion other than to say that I'm not sure that personally I kind of endorse them all equally.
Well, for today, I think exploring the neighborhood improvement district really just means getting more information. So approving this as it is does not mean we're creating a neighborhood improvement district. It just means we're putting some legwork into trying to get some more information to figure out if it's an appropriate answer to some problems.
we could also
So
consider.
maybe on a side note, would encourage our committee to also do some of that research so that we can provide, as that exploration happens, that we can provide more specific information on how we see our neighborhoods being impacted by it. I think that will be a really important aspect of our role moving forward.
Have you, Caitlin, have you lived in a neighborhood where something like this had been implemented?
Well, I just spoke to the TIF, and I think that's
okay.
where my concern is, that it's sounding very similar, and I feel a lot of impacts from that. And so I'm getting some red flags, but I don't have personal experience with the neighborhood improvement district specifically. But just want to be aware of the red flags and make sure that we're doing due diligence and looking at impacts on specifically the priority neighborhoods.
Sure.
So, Alder Allen, maybe you can help me with this motion, but it sounds like for objective 4.2, we'd like a motion to modify the header in objective 4.2 to say within priority neighborhoods, to modify the first initiative to say for any Fitchburg priority neighborhoods. We would like to modify the third initiative to say invest more funding in the Healthy Neighborhoods Grant Program, and that green bullet underneath that third initiative to say data measure dollar amount of HN funding budgeted at local level. And additionally, within this resolution, we would like to express our reservations around the utility of Initiative 1.
That sounds like you did a fine job.
Lovely.
Did you get all that transcribed?
Can I have someone make said motion?
So moved.
Okay, sorry, so all in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Any,
I would like to second.
can you say that one more time, Sharif, please?
Oh, I thought we needed to second the motion, but we can go ahead with voting.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Mark was able to second it. Yes, so any nays? Any abstentions? Amazing. That motion passes. Jessica, can you take us to the next objective, please?
The next objective is actually 5.1, and then we will discuss 5.2.
Okay, objective 5.1, focus on transportation connectivity for priority neighborhood residents.
Yes.
And is there any discussion, recommendations, or hesitations around the initiatives? There are 3.
Here's your transportation one, Mark.
I was just going to add in, as I read this, that's exactly what I wrote down, is transportation, question mark. So somehow we can't get out of that. If this is going to be in here as a priority, this group can't walk away from that as an issue, whether it ties back to the T&T Commission or to the Bike and Ped Commission. I mean, I think your comment, Jay, about all these groups have to interact and not push and pull against each other. You called it like pushing on a balloon or something. We got to make it all work together. I keep hearing transportation and housing as the 2 things that are issues in this city. That's what I keep hearing. And I think somehow this is up here because of that. And we need to figure out how it works in with this group. And if not, where does it get shuttled off to? So,
yeah, transportation and housing are clearly big issues in our priority neighborhoods. Food security is another one. All 4 of our priority neighborhoods are food deserts, basically, and that's a major problem. So I think that's something we're going to try to address in our healthy neighborhood strategic plan, priority neighborhood strategic plan, whatever we're going to call it. But yeah, these are, I mean, I think one thing that I'm grateful for is that for many years these issues have been ignored, and now we have people, we have new committees, we have people on these committees who care about these issues, and so now there's noise being made about it, which is a lot more than there was, 10, 15 years ago. So we're making steps.
The initiatives do seem to be, shall I say, attainable. They don't say provide more transportation, which is interesting. They seem to be saying we need to identify the problem, quantify the number of residents who have this challenge, provide more signage, and adopt policy. I don't know if we want to have an initiative that is more focused on actually providing transportation options, but I am noticing that.
Yeah, that's an issue, isn't it? It's, and it's, again, we're coming back to these things where that costs a lot of money. And the question is, between all the other needs the city has, how do we find the money to do it? I think the third one on here probably gets to your issue more than the other 2 do. And, advocacy for a rail transit authority would be huge. When was it? It was in 2006 or 2007. The state of Wisconsin, under different political leadership, enacted a statute that allowed for the creation of regional transit authorities. And in 2009, Dane County decided to create one. And I made my appointee, and then in 2010, as part of Act 10, the legislature and the governor deleted it from the state statutes. So it would have to be, to get this to happen, it would have to be reintroduced into the legislature, somehow get passed, and give us the means to try to do that. The benefit is that regional transit authorities have access to other funding mechanisms that we don't have as a municipality. So regional transit authorities have the ability, I think the way the statute was written had the ability to increase the tax on gasoline a little bit, like 1 cent per gallon or something, 1.5 cents. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to provide some money. There was also, they also had, what was the other way? Oh, regional transit authorities have access to federal funding grants that we can't get through other mechanisms. Because the purpose of the regional transit authority in Dane County anyway was that all municipalities were going to be part of it, and so it's kind of like an intergovernmental cooperation thing, which the federal government's happy with when you do it. So that was so I would love to advocate for a regional transit authority to come back. I don't know that even the new legislature is going to be inclined to do that, but we have a representative from Fitchburg who we can pound on and see if he'll advocate for that, because something needs to be done in a broader sense to make some of these things work.
Any other thoughts on Objective 5.1 or any other recommendations as far as adding another initiative or modifying any of the existing initiatives? So far, we just have modifying the for healthy neighborhood residents to be for priority neighborhood residents.
Well, I liked your fourth diamond, and I think since we have that in 4.2. We could just say invest more funding in the city's transportation program to include mass transit service and bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. So let's add that. You're on transportation and transit, aren't you, Mark, or not?
You're going right up my alley. Keep going.
Oh.
I'm already.
No, I just wanted
Jessica and I had this discussion last week. How do we move these people around these neighborhoods?
Yeah.
And we don't have to have a bunch of buses to do it.
Right.
We can figure out other ways to do it, whether it's bicycles, whether it's good walking routes that are safely across streets. There's a lot of things that can be done, and we're just at the tip of the iceberg. So I think that's fine to add it in there, but I think that a railroad like you said, a railroad and more buses out here are going to be tough right now. So we got to figure what can we do to begin to build the infrastructure to get it where it needs to be. That may be an end game, but I think let's get to these neighborhoods, no matter what we're going to call them, priority or healthy neighborhoods, and do things we can do that will show benefit to the residents that live there, and not just hit a tax burden like Caitlin was saying.
Right.
So I think this is all positive if we hold ourselves accountable. That's the thing. We got to have doable things that can be achieved. With hitting singles, we're not going to all hit home runs. So hit some singles to get us out there in the field, which is what this city did with B-Cycle. Right. We put it out there in about 50 places, and now we've gone to 100, and it's been a huge success. And people are able to get around the city that couldn't before. So those kind of ways to work together are how I would use this. I think it's a good thing. I would support, if you're looking for a motion, I would support it with the comment that you made to add the other thing in there, and let's move it forward.
Lovely. So for objective 5.1, we are going to have the proposed motion would be to change the heading to say priority neighborhood residents, and then to add a new initiative, a fourth initiative here to say invest more funding in cities' transportation programs to include mass transit service and bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, with the data measure being dollars invested in transportation programs. Is there anyone who wants to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Although I would add to the data measure, not just funding from the city of Fitchburg, but pursuing grant programs as well.
We got a federal grant.
Okay, can we have that motion amended then? Can we?
Well, I made the motion, so.
Lovely. Then
So-
we don't need an amendment,
No.
because that's just the original
And Mark can
motion.
accept it as a friendly amendment. And we don't have to vote on
I
it.
love it. We just
friendly
have
this
one
time of night.
motion. Okay, so anybody who wants to vote yay on this motion, please vote yay.
Aye.
Yay. Aye. Yay.
Oh, aye. Thank you.
You said yay. You asked for yay.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, lovely. And Jessica, our last objective, objective 5.2. Okay. Connect residents to and support regional non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and service providers versus duplicating service provision.
So this is one where when Ari and I met, I was like, what is this? Why do we even have this parenthetical sentence on here versus duplicating service provision? That just, I think that just confuses the issue. I don't think that serves any useful purpose. So I would, as we start off our motion for this one, I would propose eliminating that section. And this is one of the ones where the first, the first and the second and the fourth little orange diamonds, little orange triangles, all have as their data measure the number of meetings held. And there's got to be something more useful than the number of meetings held as a data measure. Because just because you hold a meeting doesn't mean you accomplished anything.
Would number of opportunities identified be better?
I would like that, yeah. I mean, so for this first one, I was going to really think about this, but I ran out of time. I would say for this first one, yeah, identify the number of opportunities identified and potential impact on the priority neighborhoods. You know, because just because somebody has a wonderful opportunity doesn't mean that it's going to work in our neighborhoods. Yeah, number of opportunities identified and potential impact in our priority neighborhoods.
I think number of opportunities identified also works for the second initiative, but the fourth initiative, it does not.
Yeah. Well, so the first initiative is dealing with NGOs, and the second one is dealing with government organizations. So they're essentially the same, just a different class of. So I think the same data measure could be used for both of those.
For initiative number 4, maybe the number of residents referred.
Yeah, you and I had talked about that. Yeah, I think number of residents referred. I would like, and you have to be careful with privacy things, but I would like to have some measure of the outcome. So just because we refer someone to some other organization doesn't mean that they're actually getting something that's going to help them. And for us to be in the future to be able to do useful analysis of what's helpful and what's not, we kind of need to know, is this working for you? So we sent you to this organization. Did they help you? And if they didn't, maybe some investigation as to why it didn't work. And I mean, was it our error in referring someone to a place that wasn't suited to their needs, or was it a failure of the service provider who just didn't do what needed to be done, or were we dealing with somebody who maybe had cognitive issues that communication became a problem, and so we needed some better connection to help them get the help they needed? I guess I would like to get more specific into what the outcome of the referrals is.
I like that. I'm just wondering the workflow of then maybe asking the referred resident to fill out a satisfaction survey, but that only works for people who are digitally savvy, or like, what is the workflow there? So for sake of time, I don't know. I'm not sure on that one. I don't know.
I think the same means in which we inform or notify residents and citizens of those services should also be the same means that we get feedback directly post-service. So whatever medium we utilize in to get that information or to get that recommendation to the city and the citizens, we should also inquire on feedback directly through that same avenue. And we can just kind of just get a rating back, as you were kind of discussing. But yeah, I think that's sufficient enough to be able to at least understand the level of satisfaction with the programs that they're recommended to, if it's a perfect fit with their need, if additional programs or other services need to be explored, and we can capture that in that feedback.
Jessica, what is your initial understanding of this bullet point's impact on either your workload or the neighborhood navigators who work in North Fish Hatchery Road neighborhood, their workload?
when staff initially read these bullets, a lot of these things are already happening. So I guess it's already, the city staff is already doing these things.
Do you already communicate with the resident after the referral is made?
So for the referral process, for the early childhood zones, is that what you're speaking of?
I'm speaking of whatever this initiative is speaking of. Build relationships with existing regional service providers, promote their activities, refer residents to them, follow up with residents.
Yes, my understanding of that initiative, again, this was not created by me, but my understanding is that is related to the early childhood zones because they have to be referred into those zones. And so that would be the neighborhood navigator program that we have here at the city. I do not believe that the neighborhood navigator follows up with them after they've been referred in, because once they get referred in, they get wraparound services, and the neighborhood navigator strictly does outreach and gives them the referrals. So to answer your question, the neighborhood navigator and city staff here at Fitchburg does not follow up.
I guess that exactly is a data metrics we can include in that section right there to be able to ensure that we're actually, following up, and also being able to ensure that our recommendations are a best fit for the need in that case.
Maybe a second metric could be number of residents who are reaching back out for requests of the exact same service, as in like their first request did not result in their need being met.
I do want to comment that the neighborhood navigator does report on duplicated and unduplicated residents that they serve. So that reporting does come to the city.
Where does it go?
It goes to the county. So then, because the neighborhood navigator is grant funded through Dane County, and Dane County takes that data.
How much direction do we have over the neighborhood navigator? Like, can we direct them to do more follow-up, or is their work restricted by what the county says?
Right now, the neighborhood navigator, their role is strictly in the Leopold School District, so it does not cover all of Fitchburg. And I believe that Dane County restricts them from following up, because the service, when they're referred in, they then have access to a lot of other social services that are available throughout the county. But I am not 100% positive if our neighborhood navigators can follow up with them or not.
Yeah, it probably gets to privacy issues, which...
All right, seeing as it's 7:30, I'm going to request that we have our final thoughts on objective 5.2.
Well, it sounds like we probably can't really, in this meeting, expand the scope of this to include follow-up on those residents. But at least...
Jay?
I'm hearing...
If I may, I think we can suggest for them to adjust or modify the data measures that are selected here, and we can give suggestion of such data measures. And that could include, seeking for rating or feedback or satisfactory rating of services that are recommended.
Sharif, what I'm hearing you say is that we can modify the data measures here in this strategic plan. Is that what you're referring to?
If we have the capacity to, yes. If not, we can make a recommendation for that to be amended.
And then what Alder Allen...
Go ahead.
Yeah, and so Completely, absolutely. And then what Alder Allen was saying was that we don't necessarily have the ability to legally require these neighborhood navigators to actually do the reaching out, to actually gather that data of were you satisfied with this service. Those neighborhood navigators get their funding from Dane County. Dane County directs the neighborhood navigators as to the scope of their job. And we don't necessarily have the ability to say, hey, neighborhood navigator, please reach back out to these residents.
And it's the neighborhood navigator, the only avenue we have to reaching out to the neighborhood and recommending services to the neighborhood within the scope of this bullet point.
Jessica?
So the neighborhood navigator is specifically related to the residents. The bullet point, and I want to make sure that I'm clear on the bullet point we're discussing. Are we still on the final one with building relationships with?
Yes.
Yeah.
That bullet point for the data measure, staff's recommendation is we had difficulties getting residents to complete our initial survey on the Healthy Neighborhoods Strategic Plan update. From what I'm understanding, to gauge residents' satisfactory of the programs we provide to them will also be difficult. And I'm not sure who in staff would be responsible for collecting that data and how that data would be collected.
Well, it sounds like it would be you.
Might the service providers collect that data and be able to share it?
The city could potentially ask, but then the city would be relying on the service providers to collect data for the city when they are not employees of the city. They are employed by the service provider, whatever that may be. So the city would be responsible for the collection of the data or reaching out to the service providers to see if they already collect the data.
I think
ideally,
Sharif, go for it.
I think ideally, the service providers already do collect that information. It's only right for them to. And I think we can reach out and request for that information. How we collect, capture, and gather that information and store that information for point of needs, now that's up to discussion or interpretation. But I think that data is available. We just have to reach for it.
My guess would be that a lot of the service providers probably collect aggregate data over all of the population that they serve. I'm not convinced that they would be able to select, which residents were referred by the neighborhood navigator of City of Fitchburg, and then give the satisfaction results for only those residents. And then the other concern was that we weren't sure if we could, really rely on them for sure sending it back, because that's not necessarily part of their job description. Working for the service provider, not the City of Fitchburg, they don't necessarily have to send us back the data. But then if it's in this strategic plan, the City of Fitchburg is kind of saying, yes, we are going to get the data, but then we don't have any control over actually collecting it.
It
looks like in the bullet prior, there's the data measure is number of Fitchburg residents utilizing regional services, right? And so that's kind of getting at that question. Not the referral question, but I'm just curious how critical the question of how many referrals versus just how many people accessing services.
The other comment I would make on this is when speaking with the service providers, they have expressed the difficulties of narrowing where the individuals they're serving are coming from, especially with how Fitchburg works with its zip codes and school districts. So I think measuring this would have to be a creative way of doing it. From my understanding, I think the city collecting data would be difficult.
Well, that makes me kind of worried for what Caitlin mentioned about the data measure underneath Initiative 3. How would we get number of Fitchburg residents utilizing regional services annually, bearing in mind exactly what you just said, Jessica, that we have already received the feedback that some of these service providers provide services without collecting addresses for,
Let me clarify. So some of the, when I speak of that, some of the providers express difficulties. They don't have to collect certain data. Now, am I fully aware of what that is? No. Do I know that what I've been told by some providers of we cannot give you priority neighborhoods, which I think is where I misstepped, but we can give you Fitchburg.
No, I don't. I think this was from before you came on board, Jessica. We actually had different service providers come and present to us, and they actually explained that there's a change coming. I don't exactly remember exactly what they said, but they said that, starting with the new application process, they're not even going to be able to necessarily know if they're a Fitchburg resident or not. I just remembered this because there's no longer going to be a requirement that you provide proof of address. Mm-hmm. For example, at food banks, that requirement is going away. I just remembered that a lot of service providers gave us that information in a prior meeting.
I was not at that meeting. So to my understanding, I've talked to Badger Prairie Needs, and they have mentioned that they do not have to require people reporting their addresses. Now, that does not mean that people won't give them, but it potentially will no longer be a requirement.
Okay, so basically there's a caveat that the data measure about number of Fitchburg residents utilizing regional services annually may or may not be fully accurate, may or may not include every resident. Any other discussion around 5.2? Okay, so it sounds like the motion for objective 5.2 involves removing the parenthetical in the title that says versus duplicating service provisions, changing the data measure under the first initiative to say number of opportunities identified and the potential impact in priority neighborhoods, modifying the data measure underneath Initiative 2 to say the exact same thing, number of opportunities identified and potential impact in priority neighborhoods. And adding a caveat or a recommendation to council that the data measure underneath Initiative 3 may or may not actually include all Fitchburg residents, but it will be as close to that as possible. And finally, modifying what data measure number 4 says to be the number of unduplicated residents referred. Is that the motion?
Sure. So moved.
Can I have a second?
Seconded.
Amazing. Okay. Any further discussion? Lovely. Let's vote. Anyone in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Lovely. That passes with everyone voting yes. So Jessica, passing it back to you. Is that the end of agenda item 5C?
Yes, and that would be, like I said, 5D was also in conjunction with this because whatever happens with the city's plan will impact what staff does with the Healthy Neighborhoods update of that plan as well.
Lovely. I'd actually like to just briefly ask if there's any other discussion that anybody wants to have around 5D specifically, which is that discussion of the update of the Healthy Neighborhood Initiative Strategic Plan, or are we good just saying like Jessica is going to, work on making sure that it is aligned with the Fitchburg Strategic Plan?
Well, I think we should have some discussion on that before staff wastes too much time on it. I mean, we're not going to be wildly different than the city's strategic plan, but I think the discussion you and I had was really important, and I think this committee should be part of that discussion. I did send out that email, but I think there are things we need to talk about. I mean, 12 pillars seems like an awful lot, but, Ari and I sat there and had a really hard time figuring out how do you narrow this down. And the 5 from the current plan are obviously not enough. Since there's nothing in there about housing, there's nothing in there about transportation, there's nothing in there about food security, which are the issues that seem to be the most important in these neighborhoods. So there's a part of me that feels like we need to have a specific work session on. I mean, when I went back and looked at other things in there, it's like, I don't know, maybe that whole thing should just be scrapped instead of us trying to modify it and start over from the beginning. Those charts in the back of it were just so cumbersome to use. And they probably make sense to somebody who does bureaucracy for a living, but I don't. So I think we need to put it. I don't want to do it tonight. I think we need to put it on a future agenda, and we may not. What's our February agenda going to be? Is that going to be reviewing the applications?
I'll have to look.
It's buried somewhere.
Yeah, it's probably.
I remember seeing it.
It's up there.
Oh, there we go.
So
there it is.
That's the grant schedule. There it is. So we'll have a working session.
Well, that is our. Well, there we go. We'll talk about it at our next meeting.
Wow, what a great idea. Let's have a strategic plan working session. All right. Lovely. Then moving on from 5D, our next agenda item is item 6, report from department. Staff, please take it away.
Yes, so for the hub, it is planned to be completed by August of 2025. The update on the Teen Center is phase 2 of the feasibility study is completed, and EQT will present the final results on January 30th to Health and Human Needs at Dane County at 5:30. There'll be some tree planting on April 26th in the Hugo Jamestown Park.
I'm sorry, that meeting on January 30th is the phase 2 report?
Yes, to Dane County.
Okay. Do we get one to Fitchburg?
For the Teen Center?
Yeah.
The EQT by design came and presented to council.
They did?
Mm-hmm. It's posted on YouTube.
Oh, well, I'll find it then. Did I miss it?
I'm not sure. For Ryan's replacement, staff has not heard that the mayor has found a replacement at the moment. And then staff is looking to create focus groups for each of the priority neighborhoods as we work through the update of the strategic plan. You will be receiving an email from me hoping that you guys can help to create these focus groups so that everyone's voice in each neighborhood is heard in the update of the plan. That's all from staff.
Jessica, can I add one question? As we talked a week or so ago, I'd like to have an idea from our city colleagues how, when the new building up here gets built at Leopold,
The hub.
how it's going to get used and run, because I see that as being something that ultimately will really blend back into what we're doing here. And we haven't heard anything other than when Jay and I were at the ribbon cutting. I haven't heard any other updates on it, and I think it's very important. And there's a group up there that we want to hear from, and I'd put them at the top of the bucket as you get into this. So, just a request, because it's kind of like with the library. We got the money to build it, but we got to run it, and it's going to cost something, and somebody's got to organize things. So,
Okay.
if you could just add that to your ever-growing list of work.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I actually have some questions on you mentioned the hub design was presented to council. Well, I didn't see it, but I heard a rumor that there's supposed to be a shared court, not just basketball. That was the original plan, but basketball and pickleball, which is very confusing. So I heard from a resident. They are very confused by this. They say it doesn't make much sense. I tend to agree. Pickleball has a net, basketball does not. They also expressed the concern about the parking lot being in the back, the court being in front, balls going into the street. There's a fire lane going through the court, so I guess everybody has to evacuate the basketball court if a fire truck needs to go through. So there was a lot of there were a lot of questions around that. And is there going to be a time for this committee to provide feedback on the hub design or hear about that?
So what I was talking to Jay about was for the teen center. The teen center, they had a meeting. The hub, has not, to my knowledge. What I know about the hub is that it's planned to be finished by August 2025, and I can connect you with our Parks and Rec director, who can answer a lot of those questions that you just had.
Yeah, the hub
please.
that ship has sailed. The contracts have been let and construction is underway. I'm sure you've seen it up there. I am not aware of any plan to put a pickleball net on the basketball court.
I think it's across the street. I think there was a I think there was a discussion at one time to redo those tennis courts that are sitting over there across the street, which is not in the hub's area. And
I don't even think those are owned by the city of Fitchburg. I think those are owned by
what are they called?
By the apartment complex.
Yeah, what's it called?
It's called the Fairways.
Yeah.
I think the Fairways. That used to be the building where the Fairways office is. Used to be a bar and grill. Well, it became a frequently visited location, which is why it got shut down. I'm pretty sure those tennis courts are owned by the Fairways.
They may be. I think if you've got a question, link up with Scott Endel and ask him. Or have the person that's coming to you link up with Scott. Because, Jessica, isn't Scott the one that's in charge of that project?
Yes.
Yeah, I would ask him. Because this ship did sail, as Jay sailed in July when they cut the ribbon. There's a bike track there. There's a pump track that they are getting some external funding, I think to fund through Saris, I think. But it's all in. This thing was all done and designed, and they're rolling. So that doesn't seem to make any sense to me. But I will tell you, from playing pickleball, you can move those nets, And you certainly can play pickleball on a basketball court if nobody's playing basketball, but you schedule it. That's what they do in Verona. So, but I'd ask Scott.
Yeah, I can connect you with Scott.
Yeah.
Thank you. Was that the entire report from department?
Yeah, that's
Amazing.
the staff report.
Any announcements? Agenda item 7.
Hopefully in the next, I think it's by the end of February, we should have some finalized options for the new park stuff that we're going to be buying for Southdale. So we've got $500,000 in the budget to redo that park. All that equipment that was there was dilapidated and pretty much done for. So there's going to be a new shelter, I think, or maybe we're revitalizing the existing shelter, but there's going to be restrooms installed and some new playground equipment in 2 different areas. There's going to be some smaller kids' playground equipment and some bigger kids' playground equipment. That's what we're asking for from the companies that do playground equipment. So Scott has been resistant to this, but I told him that when we have some plans available, we really need to get some outreach done to the community and get their input. So I'm going to really be pushing for that, and I'm going to ask that the plan be sent to this committee also so that we can at least see what's going on and provide some input if we have any.
I also heard about an event that is being sponsored by Just Dane. It is on Friday, January 17th at 5 p.m. It is called Breaking Down Barriers, Police Discretion, Charging Disparities, and Racial Dynamics in Criminal Justice. It is at the Atrium at 2300 South Park Street in Madison. So Friday, January 17th at 5 p.m. Other announcements? Amazing. All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. We all can't wait to stay here.
Seconds?
I second.
Yay. Okay, seconded by Mark. All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Any nays? Any abstentions? Lovely. We are adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody.